In this video, I want to answer the question, what is the Consent and Capacity Board? And maybe you just came across this video, but maybe you're looking it up because you really need to know now, because this is something that's impacting your life in a very significant way. So here's a few key points so that you get a sense of what the Consent and Capacity Board in Ontario is all about. So first things first, it is a board. That word may not mean very much. So another word for that is a tribunal. You may have heard of some tribunals and not even realized. For example, the Human Rights Tribunal. That is one that a lot of people have heard of. Another very popular one is the Landlord-Tenant Board. These are tribunals in the sense that they are like a court. Parties appear before them with evidence. They might have their own rules a little bit here and there in terms of how they're different, but they're quite similar in that somebody presents a case either on their own or with a legal representative. They ask questions, they may produce documentation, they will make legal arguments, and at the end of the day, the person or panel of people making decisions on that board, they will render a binding decision, a conclusion about what happens in that case. And if one of the parties doesn't like it, they can appeal it up through the court system. So it's very much like a court, but a little different, and the hearing does not take place in a courtroom. In fact, the Consent and Capacity Board is very, very unique. It's a traveling board, which means hearings take place in hospitals, long-term care facilities, and it moves around based on where the parties are located. So that's kind of big point number one of what it is. It's a tribunal, kind of like a court. Number two, in terms of the Consent Capacity Board, is that they deal with matters, not surprisingly, about consent and capacity. But I'll get a little more specific because that's not that helpful. So matters involving consent have to do with consent to make medical decisions. For example, am I capable of making my own medical decisions? Or if I'm acting as somebody's substitute decision maker, am I following the rules of a substitute decision maker in how I make my decisions? So consent and capacity, that's what those pieces are. Capacity is about the kind of mental ability for a person to make decisions for themselves. And then consent has to do with who's making the decisions, have they made decisions as they are required by law, or is there a conflict between people? Sometimes there can be more than one person competing to make decisions. End of life is where this comes up quite often in terms of these conflicts. It's the end of life decision making that can result in Consent Capacity Board hearings where people in a family are not in agreement about whether to withdraw life support, and they might be arguing that one decision is in the best interest of a patient and another person is arguing that is not in the best interest of a patient. So the Consent and Capacity Board would have the final say, unless it goes up through the court system if somebody appeals. The third piece that's kind of important to understand conceptually is the Consent and Capacity Board is an important part of checks and balances in society when it comes to infringing on people's right to autonomy and their right to bodily freedom. Because consent and capacity in this context is about consent generally to make medical decisions and capacity to make medical decisions. These can be huge infringements on people's liberty if they're being treated without their consent. That might be because they're unconscious, or it could be they lack capacity due to a mental illness, dementia, developmental disabilities. But in our society, we don't just give one person complete unfettered authority without checks and balances to make decisions for another person. So the Consent and Capacity Board is one of the legal vehicles to confirm and to assess if decisions are being made in accordance with the applicable laws. So it's another way to kind of ensure that a person who cannot advocate for themselves or make decisions for themselves or has lost the right to do so has sort of another opportunity in front of a neutral third party to have the entire case be heard and assessed so that people's rights are not infringed upon unduly, and that if they are infringed upon inappropriately, unlawfully, that they can be caught by this tribunal. So that is it for this video. I hope you learned something new, and I will see you in the next one.